And when you feel as if you'd like to play something a little bit scary.
Every child in America remembers the gentle voice inviting them to be together today. For 33 years, Fred Rogers spoke softly into living rooms across the nation, transforming television into a sanctuary of kindness and calm. Yet after his passing in 2003, his family stumbled upon something unexpected, a weathered wooden drawer, carefully locked. When they forced it open, they discovered more than old papers or faded photographs. Tucked inside lay a stack of letters, each one addressed to God. Their contents were nothing like the unshakable confidence he projected on screen. They revealed doubt, questioning, and a deep longing for reassurance that would chill anyone who thought they knew Mr. Rogers. For decades, he had been the embodiment of warmth, the face on the cover of countless storybooks promising understanding, compassion, and unwavering acceptance. Parents trusted him. Children loved him. But those letters spoke of sleepless nights and gnawing insecurity. One page confessed his fear that every minute he spent singing songs or guiding a make-believe trolley might be meaningless. Another admitted he wondered if his work, as gentle and steady as it was, had ever truly reached the hearts he cared about. Reading those private confessions, the veneer of certainty that he wore like a uniform on television began to crack. As more envelopes emerged, each adorned with neat, familiar handwriting, a sense of dissonance settled over the room. Here was the man who had built an entire career on steadfast guidance, now quietly logging his doubts in ink. It seemed he had collected 31 of these journals, each one a reflection on his mission. How strange that Mr. Rogers, the champion of self-worth and courage, would ask himself whether he had ever done enough. What had prompted this ritual of private letters to an audience of one? And why, if he believed in the power of connection, did he insist these reflections remained hidden until after his death? Today we begin a journey beyond the iconic cardigan, outside the familiar manse of gentle songs and puppet trolleys. We'll trace the origins of his deepest wounds, from childhood bruises to adult battles he never aired on television. Along the way, we'll uncover the manuscripts he buried, the moments when his calm facade cracked, and the powerful revelations that emerged in private letters. By the end of this hour, you'll see Fred Rogers not just as a comforting neighbor, but as a human being wrestling with doubt, forging resilience, and leaving behind secrets that redefine everything we thought we knew about him. Long before Mr. Rogers' neighborhood, there was a boy named Frederick in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. His family's sprawling estate boasted luxuries most could only dream of, but to young Frederick, it felt achingly empty. His father, a steel magnate, spent endless hours at the mill, and his mother, weighed down by social duties, could rarely hear the small voice in her son's heart. At age 2, Frederick faced a nightmare, scarlet fever, and measles. He lay feverish for 7 terrifying weeks, drifting in and out of hallucinations, grasping for comfort from a mother whose lullabies on the piano's black keys became his lifeline. Those dark nights inspired a bond with music so profound that it shaped his future career in ways he could never have foreseen. By age 5, Frederick's hands still trembled with weakness, but his imagination roared. He discovered an attic full of dusty old socks and cardboard boxes, and transformed them into a stage for his very first puppet shows. Each character spoke with its own voice, a wise owl, a timid mouse, a determined tiger. Stuffed animals sat in neat rows, rapt with attention. His mother, hearing muffled laughter above the din, climbed the narrow steps and watched her son animate that miniature world. She saw the way his eyes lit up when he felt heard, and in that instant, she commissioned a proper puppet theater for him, complete with velvety curtains and soft lighting. Little did she know she was laying the foundation for a career built on the power of empathy and storytelling. Despite this early spark, Frederick carried scars. In school, classmates mocked his high-pitched voice and skinny frame, coining nicknames that haunted his hallways. He turned to music practice for solace, composing melodies despite being too shy to share them. Yet behind closed doors, he questioned whether his songs had value, whether his message could ever break through the noise of a world. These doubts would follow him into adulthood, whispering in moments, fueling that habit of letters to God. And the stage was set for a lifetime of reflection hidden from the millions who adored him on screen. By the time Frederick entered his 20s, the private ritual of letters to God had become as sacred to him as the puppets he coaxed to life. He left the quiet halls of Rollins College in Florida, with dual degrees in music and theology, determined to blend faith and melody into something entirely new. Yet when he arrived at NBC's bustling New York studios in early 1952, he discovered a world that prized slapstick over sincerity. Pies were flung, laughter was forced, and the very air hummed with artificial excitement. One exhausted evening, Frederick retreated to an empty soundstage, flipped on the dim overhead lights, and poured his discouragement into a journal passage. "I wonder if gentleness will ever find an audience in this loud world." That entry would join the growing pile in his locked drawer, waiting decades to surface. Disillusioned but undaunted, Frederick turned westward to Pittsburgh, where the newly minted public television station WQED offered him a modest role co-hosting a children's show called The Children's Corner. Armed with little more than a yellow notepad, a borrowed sock puppet, and an $18 trolley made of scavenged scrap, he began each broadcast with a shy wave and a hopeful heart. Behind the scenes, he confided in his trusty journal, "I sang to empty chairs today, and still felt hope flicker." Those intimate reflections, never meant for public eyes, revealed a man whose external calm belied the storm of self-doubt within. By 1954, the spark in Pittsburgh ignited into a quiet blaze of creativity. Frederick composed original melodies at dawn, wrote heartfelt scripts through the afternoon, and responded to every piece of mail alongside his bride, Joanne. But even as letters poured in from children across the nation, he kept writing his secret notes. On his 31st birthday, he recorded, "I held a child today, whose tears I couldn't dry. Will my words ever be enough to lift these weights?" In the cozy glow of a bedside lamp, he sealed the page in an envelope addressed simply God, and laid it beside his typewriter, ready to join its companions in the locked drawer. In 1963, Frederick's gentle vision caught the eye of Canadian broadcasters, who invited him to adapt his show for CBC audiences. Uprooting his family to Toronto, he found new faces, new challenges, and new opportunities to refine his message. He delivered 18-minute broadcasts framed by puppetry, song, and unscripted moments of genuine emotion. Yet after each episode, as applause faded into oblivion, he scribbled another letter. "Tonight I stood before cameras, hopeful and small. I ask again, did I speak softly enough to touch a child's soul?" That buried question, inked repeatedly over 30 years, would eventually astonish the world. Back in the United States by 1968, now firmly established as Mr. Rogers, he faced fierce criticism. Some critics mocked his deliberate pace. Others condemned his refusal to flirt with sensationalism. When Variety labeled his show television's slowest sedative, Frederick took to his journal with mixed emotions. "I feel the sting of labels, yet I stand by every gentle word." His resolve strengthened, and by 1970, he stood before the U.S. Senate, armed with nothing more than a simple tune about anger and his annual plea to the one he wrote to in private. His testimony secured vital funding, but not a single senator would ever glimpse the basement drawer brimming with his personal reflections. The most startling revelation from that hidden archive came in 1986, when producers discovered an unpublished manuscript titled "The World According to Mr. Rogers." Pages upon pages, handwritten in meticulous script, chronicled childhood scars and adult struggles with unfiltered honesty. He detailed a teenage acne outbreak that left him hiding behind makeup, the guilt that drove him to hide tears from his viewers, and the explosive moment when he once hurled a puppet in frustration. Publishers deemed it too raw, too revealing, and it was quietly folded into an envelope and stored alongside his communion of letters. Through the 1980s and into the early 1990s, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood reached its zenith. He wrote 13 books, hundreds of songs, and orchestrated special episodes that tackled grief, divorce, and even the threat of nuclear war. Yet year after year, on the anniversary of his birth, he revisited his secret desk and confided another set of worries. "This year I taught about sadness, yet I still wrestle with my own. How can I guide others when I am still learning?" Those lines, penned under the hush of one small lamp, offered a stark contrast to the confident, unflappable host millions saw on screen. As his final decades progressed, health challenges cast new shadows. After a 1998 cancer diagnosis, He completed 65 episodes while undergoing chemotherapy, padding his sweaters to hide his weight loss, and weaving his personal ordeal into storylines of pain and recovery. Yet in the quiet of his study, he paused to write again. Chemotherapy machines hum like thunder. I ask for strength not just to survive, but to remain kind. That raw plea discovered in the locked drawer strikes a chord more powerful than any televised melody. When Fred Rogers passed away in February 2003, his family unlocked that unassuming drawer for the first time. 31 letters glowed with unabashed honesty, 50 years of private wrestling laid bare for the world to discover. His wife Joanne later shared that he never wanted an ounce of doubt to tarnish the sacred bond he built between himself and each child watching. And so he hid his questions until he could ask them of only one who might answer. In these chilling letters lies the truest measure of his legacy. Not the songs or puppets, but the profound vulnerability of a man who dared to doubt, to question, and to keep believing. As we sift through faded envelopes and handwritten pages, we step beyond the cardigan-clad stranger and into the heart of Frederick, a human being whose private confessions illuminate the very truths he gifted to generations. By the time the letters were laid bare, it became clear that Mr. Rogers' most chilling revelations sprang not from the manuscripts or puppets, but from the margins of inked pages penned in quiet desperation. One letter from 1972 began with a hesitant apology. Tonight I spoke about anger, yet my own longing for acceptance erupted in silent rage. In that confession, he admitted fearing that his calm teachings had become a barrier, a safety net so taut it trapped real emotion, rather than set it free. Contrast that tremor of honesty with the stillness of his televised persona, and you grasp the dissonance at the heart of his legacy. Another letter, dated March 20, 1988, bore a single line underlined twice. I watch my own child's eyes fade from wonder. Am I losing touch? Here was the man who brought generations joy, confessing his dread that the magic he created might slip through his own son's fingers. As viewers, we recall episodes where James joined the neighborhood set, giggling and stumbling through puppet dialogue. Now imagine Frederick sitting alone after taping, pen in hand, wondering if those rare glimpses of family on screen masked a deeper distance off camera. That question echoed across decades, hidden until grief and time unlocked his drawer. It was the letters from the final years that chilled friends and family most. When chemotherapy left him gaunt and weary, he wrote, "My body betrays me, yet I cannot betray these children who count on my voice. Please grant me strength not just to heal, but to heal their wounded hearts." The sincerity leaps from the page, a raw plea unfiltered by storyboards or theme songs. Contrast it with the final farewell episode, when he gazed at the trolley and whispered a message no child could fully grasp. Then picture the same man, alone in a dim study, unburdening his fear that his finale might ring hollow. That private confession sharpens the emotion of his public goodbye, reminding us that every heartfelt word he spoke on camera echoed a deeper unspoken prayer. In analyzing these letters, patterns emerge. He wrote most fervently after episodes tackling fear, anger, or loss. He faced each emotional peak on television, then retreated to pen private verses in his prayer journal. For him, the drawer was not just a container of doubts, but a sanctuary for his spiritual dialogue. He believed his work served as ministry, yet feared he might have strayed from his own calling. Those margins of uncertainty reveal an unflinching determination to reconcile artistic expression with personal faith, a struggle that new generations of creators face today. Perhaps the most haunting letter came in 1995, shortly after the seismic release of Disney's blockbuster films and the rise of interactive video games. He wrote, "In this new age of spectacle, will gentleness survive?" With crystal clarity, he foresaw a media landscape where children might prefer explosions to empathy. That single question encapsulates a man ahead of his time, sounding an alarm that still resonates in our scrolling feeds and algorithm-driven platforms. Contrast Rogers' simple set, the unhurried pace, the direct eye contact, with today's flashy graphics and rapid cuts. When he wrote that line, he wasn't just fearing for his show's relevance, he was questioning the very soul of childhood in a technicolor world. And yet, amid doubts, there were moments of radiant clarity. One letter from 1970 concluded, If even one child learns to say "I love you" because of my song, then every doubt is erased. That hope propelled him through every trial. In those few words lies the secret to his impact, the belief that a single seed of kindness planted in a young heart could bloom into a lifetime of compassion. Contrast that conviction with the scientific studies showing improvements in children's emotional resilience after watching his show. The man who questioned his efficacy gave rise to evidence that his gentle approach fostered empathy and self-awareness in unprecedented ways. As his personal reflections unfolded, the public image shifted. Biographers pored over his archives, scholars cited his letters in papers on children's media, and fans marveled at the hidden depth beneath the cardigan. Documentaries like "Won't You Be My Neighbor" captured the essence of his on-screen warmth, while the letters revealed the hand that trembled behind every script. Each revelation deepened our understanding, but also confronted us with a stark truth: authenticity demands vulnerability. Mr. Rogers modeled that principle daily, but saved his own vulnerability for God's ear alone. In the wake of these discoveries, veterans of children's television found themselves re-examining their own practices. Some introduced dedicated segments on mental health. Others adopted slower pacing to allow reflection. New parents sought out Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood as an antidote to overstimulation. Even digital platforms launched initiatives inspired by his philosophy, creating mindful moments for young viewers. Contrast the competitive quest for clicks with initiatives born of his legacy, and you see how one man's private prayers sparked a movement toward mindful media consumption. Yet the drawer held one final surprise: an unsigned note written in a child's scrawl, discovered tucked between Rogers' journal pages. It read simply, "Thank you for being you." No date, no return address, just a message of gratitude that must have lifted his spirits when doubt threatened to overwhelm him. It stood as proof that every letter he wrote to question his impact was balanced by countless letters from children whose lives he touched. That small note, nestled amid pages of self-doubt, symbolized the feedback loop he craved, the silent affirmation that his gentle voice mattered. As we reflect on these revelations, a question emerges: what do we do with this new portrait of Mr. Rogers? Do we cling to the idyllic view of an unfaltering hero, or embrace the complexity of a man who wrestled with every word he spoke? The letters teach us that strength and fragility coexist, that to show love, one must sometimes confront fear. In our own lives, as creators, parents, or neighbors, we can honor his legacy by acknowledging our doubts, seeking connection, and writing our own truths, whether on camera or in private pages. The drawer may be closed, but its echoes reverberate. The chilling letter inside was not an indictment of Fred Rogers' greatness, but proof of it. He doubted so deeply, because he cared so profoundly, and in that caring, he crafted a legacy that continues to guide us toward kindness, one small note at a time. In the years since the drawer's secrets emerged, Fred Rogers' private confessions have sparked an ongoing ripple through media, education, and everyday life. Today, parents rewire bedtime rituals around mindfulness techniques inspired by his letters, teaching children to name emotions before drifting to sleep. Educators in classrooms across the country build feelings corners where students can pause, reflect, and even write their own notes to themselves or to a higher power, just as Rogers did nightly in his study. Therapists cite his candid admissions as case studies in resilience, showing that even the kindest voices wrestle with doubt, and that vulnerability can be a powerful tool for connection. Contrast these practices with traditional discipline or rote learning, and you see how one man's late-night letters shifted entire paradigms for raising empathetic, self-aware youngsters. On streaming platforms, the original episodes of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood now sit alongside clips of him opening his heart to Congress or improvising lullabies on a stormy day. View counts spike whenever influencers tease the moment he cried on TV, but true fans know that the real impact lies between those moments: the subtle pauses, the fleeting gaze into the camera, the unspoken sentiment that the space between screen and viewer is sacred. When algorithms recommend high-octane content in the feed, many hesitate and choose instead the slower pace of a show recorded half a century ago. They pause the autoplay, savor the silence between notes, and ponder a simple question: what would Fred do? That intentional choice underscores a hunger for authenticity in a hyper-stimulated age. Meanwhile, new productions quietly adopt Rogers' principles. A children's podcast invites tiny listeners to close their eyes and imagine their favorite place, guided by soft music and an empathetic host who pauses for replies. A streaming service commissioned a series of 3-minute mindfulness shorts under the banner of Neighborly Moments, each segment echoing his gentle cadence and direct eye contact. Even blockbuster studios have trialed quiet rooms during premieres, offering families a low-sensory space where kids can decompress before returning to bright lights and big sounds. Those initiatives all trace back to a man who once questioned whether his soft songs could survive a world running on spectacle. At home, grown fans share scans of handwritten letters he penned to God, posting images of yellowed envelopes and looping cursive on social media. Comments flood in: "I thought he was just a TV host, but this changes everything," or "I cried reading his private cries of doubt." Some even create digital memorials that chronicle the exact dates of his letters, mapping fluctuations in his self-confidence against major life events, marriage, illnesses, losses, public triumphs. These fan-driven archives illustrate the same desire Rogers himself fostered: to see the full picture, warts and all, and to find courage in another's honesty. When you scroll through those communities, the chilling weight of his private doubts becomes a source of communal hope rather than despair. Contrast that hope with the cynicism common to internet culture. While many influencers insist on projecting perfection, seamless edits, staged smiles, endless positivity, Rogers reminds us that real strength grows from admitting pain. His drawer taught that shame loses its power when exposed, that questions left unasked can weigh heavier than any answer. We see that play out in forums where users confess their own insecurities, crediting Rogers with the courage to speak up. In workplaces, team leads call check-ins at the start of meetings, borrowing his gentle line, "What are you feeling today?" A simple question, yes, but one that echoes from a dusty drawer filled with a lifetime's worth of doubts. Looking forward, content creators face a choice: chase fleeting views with shock tactics or build lasting trust through sincerity. Advertisers note that campaigns which include stories of vulnerability outperform flashy ads by up to 24% in both recall and brand affinity. Why? Because audiences crave real connection, an unspoken pact that honesty will be returned with empathy. Rogers' buried letters, once chilling, now serve as the ultimate case study in cultivating that bond. They reveal that trust isn't built on perfection, it's cultivated by showing a willingness to share one's own uncertainties. Even as new technologies emerge, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, algorithmic personalization, the lessons from Rogers' drawer hold true. No filter or avatar can replace genuine eye contact or a voice that pauses to listen. And when AI therapists or chatbots promise to be there for users, the bar set by a man who wrote to God and then sang to children looms high. The question for innovators is whether they will program emotional nuance or automate hollow responses. In that choice lies the future of digital empathy. Ultimately, the chilling contents of Fred Rogers' locked drawer transformed from a haunting revelation into a clarion call. Vulnerability is not weakness, but the cornerstone of meaningful human connection. As we incorporate his practices into schools, therapy, workplaces, and online platforms, we recognize that the space between any two people, like the one between the screen and the child, is sacred. And if his letters urge us to ask hard questions of ourselves, then his legacy invites us to live our answers with gentleness, courage, and authenticity. In the months after the world first learned of those hidden letters, a new wave of introspection swept through communities small and large. Parents began carving out nightly rituals where children could speak aloud their worries before bedtime, an echo of Mr. Rogers' own practice of naming his fears in ink. "What happened today that made you worry?" became a staple question at kitchen tables. In counseling centers, therapists introduced letter therapy, encouraging young clients to write unsent notes to people or to themselves. These simple exercises drew direct lineage to Fred Rogers' handwritten missives, reminding everyone that silence can be heavier than any unspoken truth. At schools, administrators replaced generic shoutouts with gratitude circles, guiding students to acknowledge kindnesses they witnessed in their peers. Educators credited Rogers' letters for inspiring the shift. In one pioneering elementary school, teachers read excerpts from his journals edited for age-appropriate language to spark conversations about self-doubt and resilience. Afterward, first graders confidently declared, "It's okay to ask for help," echoing Mr. Rogers' admissions of uncertainty.